I always thought if my marriage ended, it would be loud, shouting, slammed doors, one of us storming out in fury. But it ended over creme brulee. The candlelight flickered between us, softening the sharp edges of the truth. Emily was smiling, barely. That polite kind of smile people wear when they've already left the room in their minds. She hadn't touched her wine. Her fingers tapped her phone screen twice, quickly, before flipping it face down beside her plate like she was hiding something sacred. I knew who it was. I'd known for weeks. "Is the dessert not good?" I asked. My voice came out too calm, even to my own ears. She blinked, startled, then gave me that guilty smile again. "It's fine. I'm just not really hungry." She wasn't hungry because Liam probably texted her, telling her he missed her. Or that he was outside. Or that he couldn't wait to finally start their life together. I imagined him with that same damn leather bracelet she gave him in college, always looking like he belonged in a music video instead of real life. He had always made her feel 16 again. Reckless. Untouchable. And I made her feel safe. Maybe too safe. "I've been thinking," I said, setting my fork down. "If there's someone else, you don't have to pretend." Her eyes widened. She tried to laugh, to cover the crack in her composure. "Aaron, what? No, don't be ridiculous. You check your phone when you think I'm not looking. You smile at messages you won't show me. And when we touch, you flinch like it's an obligation." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I leaned back. The silence between us stretched until it creaked. "If he makes you feel something you thought you lost, go." She stared at me like I had slapped her. Maybe because I didn't shout. Maybe because I gave her what she didn't know she was asking for. I didn't want to hurt you," she whispered. "You already did," I said, softly. "I just decided not to bleed out for it." When the waiter returned, I asked for the check. Emily didn't argue. She only nodded, wiping under her eyes like she was allergic to consequence. That night, she packed a single bag. She said thank you before leaving. Thank you, for what, I'm still not sure. For not fighting. For letting her chase a fantasy. I stood at the window and watched her get in the Uber, then vanish into the night. And as I locked the door behind her, something inside me cracked open, and it wasn't grief. Not yet. It was clear. I used to believe love could survive anything if it was rooted in respect. Not passion, not fireworks, just quiet respect. I thought that was enough. That I was enough. My name is Aaron Caldwell. I'm 38, an architect by trade, and a man shaped more by silence than by grand declarations. Maybe it's the way I grew up. Blue-collar roots, quiet dinners, a father who measured love on fixed roofs and paid bills, not poetry. I learned early that building things, homes, careers, relationships, takes patience. Maintenance. Care. And I applied that same blueprint to my marriage. Emily was nothing like me. She was a flame in a world of muted colors. She painted in oils, spoke in metaphors, and laughed like the world had never touched her. We met at a community art fundraiser I was sponsoring. She spilled red wine on my shirt and apologized in verses. I should have known then, nothing with her would ever be ordinary. She was magnetic. Her energy pulled everyone in, especially me. And I think what attracted her to me was precisely what I now know drove her away: stability. I didn't need to be the center of attention. I listened. I remembered details. I gave her space and structure. For a while, she said that was everything she never knew she needed. But people like Emily don't live in blueprints. They crave spontaneity, the unknown. And hidden behind her love for me was a shadow she never fully addressed: Liam. Liam Bennett. The so-called first love. The ghost in our shared bed. He was a name she never mentioned, but one that hovered like a scent on her old letters. I saw him once, before I ever knew he mattered. We passed each other outside her art show. He had the look of someone who didn't care what the world thought, guitar case on his back, eyes that burned like he knew too much too soon. Emily's hand slipped from mine when she saw him, just for a second. But it was enough. Later, when I asked about it, she brushed it off. Just someone from the past. We were kids. It was messy. I didn't press. Love, I told myself, wasn't jealous. It was trusting. But trust only works when everyone's playing by the same rules. Emily came from a wealthier family, artistic, liberal, connected. Her mother was a gallery curator, her father a jazz pianist with a portfolio that kept them comfortable. They'd never said it outright, but I always felt their eyes scanning me for cracks. I didn't go to the right schools. I didn't come from the kind of world where people talked about impressions and legacies. I built things. I solved problems. I gave their daughter a quiet life with clean sheets and a garden she could paint in. I thought that was enough. But Liam? He was her rebellion. The poor boy turned into a wandering poet. They were 16 when they fell in love, 17 when her parents intervened. He wasn't going anywhere, her mother had said. So Emily let him go, or maybe just buried him somewhere deep, waiting for the day he'd resurface like a song she couldn't stop humming. When he did come back, 10 years later, she found him online. I discovered the emails by accident, one night when she left her laptop open. I read enough to know. Enough to feel the ground under me shift. She hadn't slept with him, not yet. But the emotional betrayal was louder than sex could ever be. The longing in her words. The way she described our life. As quiet, too safe, comfortable like a well-worn sweater. I didn't confront her. Not then. I wanted to see if she'd come clean. I gave her weeks. Opportunities. Openings. And she said nothing. That's when I realized I loved her more than she ever loved me, and that's a dangerous imbalance to live with. The day I let her go, we were at dinner. Anniversary number 7. She wore a dark green dress I'd always liked, but her eyes were elsewhere. I saw the message flash on her phone. His name, Liam. I took a breath, folded my napkin, and said the words that started this slow, burning collapse. If you still love him, I won't stand in your way. She blinked like she didn't hear me. But then her lips parted, and she said the most honest thing I'd ever heard from her, I don't know what I feel anymore. That was all I needed. And yet, even then, I wasn't angry. I was free. The kind of freedom that doesn't feel like liberation, but like floating, untethered, weightless, and terrifying. She left a week later. They say grief comes in waves. But mine came in blueprints. I started drawing again, structures that didn't crack, designs that held their shape under pressure. Unlike me. I told myself I had nothing left to give her. But that wasn't true. I had one last gift to offer her. Clarity. And in time, consequences. I used to think love was supposed to feel like a safe harbor. Like if you were lucky enough to find someone who made the world seem softer, warmer, you anchored yourself and never let go. That's what I thought I had with Emily. We met at an art auction fundraiser downtown. I was there half out of obligation, half curiosity. My firm had designed the event space, and I wanted to see it in action. She was there with her parents, art collectors from the old money side of the city. I remember her brushing past me with a glass of champagne in hand, eyes fixed on a painting of a cracked porcelain doll. I like broken things, she said, almost to herself. I turned, caught her profile, and, God help me, I was smitten right then. Not with her looks, though she had those in spades, but with that sentence. It was so exposed. Unfiltered. We started talking that night. I expected her to be snobby or detached, but she wasn't. She was magnetic in that effortless way some people are when they've never had to fight for attention. But underneath that charm was someone who'd been bruised by life in ways money couldn't shield. And I wanted to be the one who didn't just admire her cracks, I wanted to fill them. We fell into something fast and heady. Her parents raised an eyebrow at me, a self-made architect with no pedigree and no recognizable surname, but I worked hard, dressed the part, and didn't push too hard. Eventually, they accepted me, or at least stopped making it difficult for her. Emily once told me that what drew her in was my calm. "You never make me feel like I'm standing on a cliff's edge," she said. "With you, I can breathe." And I clung to that. Maybe too tightly. Our relationship wasn't a firestorm. It was slow building, deliberate, rooted in routines and shared silences. I cooked for her. She painted while I worked late. We'd take road trips to nowhere, just to drive and talk about dreams. I proposed 2 years in, on a snowy night with fairy lights strung across the balcony. She cried and said yes like it was the answer she'd been rehearsing her whole life. And yet, even back then, something lingered. A shadow I couldn't name. Sometimes, I'd catch her lost in thought, staring at old sketchbooks or listening to sad indie ballads on repeat. She said it was her process. That artists had to bleed to create. But one night, maybe a year into our marriage, I found her drunk in the studio, crying over a painting she'd torn in half. When I asked what happened, she whispered, "It's not him." It never was. She didn't say who him was. She never had to. She told me once, casually, like it meant nothing, that she had a first love in college. Liam. A musician with a wild heart and no direction. He was all passion and chaos, she said, and he nearly ruined me. She made it sound like a cautionary tale. But I saw the way her voice caught when she said his name. I convinced myself it was just nostalgia. A relic. Nothing more. Still, the more stable our life became, mortgage, promotions, gallery showings, the more she seemed to wilt. Like the safety she once craved had become a cage. And I, the man she once claimed made her feel at peace, had become the warden. I didn't know how to fix it. I tried, though. I booked us trips. Took days off just to spend time with her. Gave her the space to create. Encouraged her when she wanted to pivot her style or start mentoring younger artists. But I couldn't compete with the memory. I never said it out loud, but I knew the truth, I was her stability, not her fantasy. Sometimes, love isn't enough. Not when it's carrying the weight of someone else's ghost. Still, I held on. Because I believed people choose love. That passion fades, but commitment is what builds a life. I thought if I just stayed, I loved her harder, quieter, better, she'd forget about the cliff's edge and learn to love the shore. I didn't know I was helping her pack the parachute she'd use to jump. Not yet. But I would soon. I always thought if she ever left, it would be with a suitcase full of regrets and a glance over her shoulder. But that night, Emily didn't look back. We were standing in the foyer, the warmth of the chandelier spilling across the hardwood floor, catching the gleam of her suitcase wheels. I could still smell the pepper and rosemary from the untouched roast chicken in the kitchen. Our 7th anniversary dinner, now just cold meat and bitter silence. "I'm not doing this to hurt you," she said, adjusting the strap of her leather bag like it weighed more than it did. I nodded. "Then why does it feel like dying?" She hesitated. For a second, I thought she'd crumble. Cry, maybe. Touch my face like she used to and say it was all a mistake. But she didn't. She just looked at me with that maddening mix of guilt and conviction. Like she wanted me to hate her, so it would be easier to leave. "I need to know," she whispered. "What I would have had with him." Him. She didn't say his name, but I could hear it ringing between the walls. Liam. The man with the sad eyes and the guitar-stained fingers. The ghost from her college days who had slipped back into her life like a song she never stopped humming under her breath. I had known for weeks. Months, maybe. Her eyes changed when she talked about her studio hours. Her laughter started coming from a different place, shallow, distracted. I saw his name flash across her phone once. A blink of a moment, but long enough to burn it into memory. I never confronted her. Not out of fear. Out of curiosity, maybe. Or cowardice. I wanted to see how far she'd go, or maybe I wanted to give her space to prove me wrong. Instead, she leaned into the fantasy like it was a secret door to the life she thought I stole from her. We weren't broken. That's what hurt most. We had lazy Sunday mornings. We had inside jokes and shared playlists. We had nights she fell asleep on my chest while I read, her hand curled into the fold of my shirt. We had a life. But somehow, it wasn't loud enough for her heart. "I'm not asking you to wait for me," she said as she reached the door. I chuckled. Not out of humor. Out of disbelief. "You think I'd wait?" That was the last real thing I said to her. She left, and the door clicked shut like the final note of a long, unfinished song. The first week after she moved out, I kept expecting her to call. Not to apologize, Emily wasn't the apologizing type, but to ask about her plants, or whether her favorite mug was still in the dishwasher. She didn't. The silence screamed louder than any fight we never had. I saw pictures eventually. A friend of a friend sent them without comment. Emily and Liam at an outdoor cafe, arms tangled like teenagers. She looked younger in those photos, or maybe just hollowed out by nostalgia. Liam looked exactly how I remembered from her stories, disheveled charm, eyes that promised the world, hands that never held it long enough to keep anything steady. He played at a bar downtown now. Not some romantic amphitheater under the stars like she'd imagined, but a small venue next to a laundromat. But still, he sang. And she listened. That seemed to be enough for her. At least for a while. I went back to work, but everything moved like I was underwater. Clients noticed. My assistant, Danielle, gave me those long glances across meetings, the kind where sympathy looks a lot like pity. I hated that. But I didn't fall apart. Not on the outside, anyway. Inside? I was in a cathedral gutted by fire. Beautiful bones. Charred heartwood. 2 months after she left, her mother called me. That surprised me. "Just wanted you to know. Emily's not doing as well as she lets on," she said quietly. "Liam lost a job, or never had one, and they're behind on rent. She won't say it, but I think she misses things. You. Things. Me. Not love. Not even regret. Just things." I thanked her. Hung up. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't reach for the whiskey. Because now I understood something I hadn't before. Emily didn't leave me for love. She left me for an echo. She chased a version of herself she thought she'd lost, back when life was simpler and feelings were untested. Liam wasn't a man, he was a myth she'd kept in her back pocket for years. A what-if that glittered in the shadows of our marriage. I was never competing with him. I was competing with nostalgia. And nostalgia always wins the first round. But the second? The second round belongs to reality. And reality doesn't play fair. The night I saw them again, in person, was unplanned. I was walking into a gallery. One I'd helped design 2 years ago. It had clean lines and light like water. I came for the art. Not for ghosts. But there she was. Standing near a sculpture, arms crossed. Thinner. My eyes are tired. Liam stood beside her, tapping his phone, uninterested. She turned, and her eyes met mine. Something passed through her expression, shock, maybe. Or shame. She tried to smile. I didn't. I just nodded once, then walked past her like she was another piece on the wall. No words. No vengeance. Just silence. The kind that says, you chose this. And now, I choose me. I didn't cry when she left. No, Emily packed her things while I poured myself a whiskey, neat. I sat at the edge of the couch, watching her fold sweaters we bought together in Rome, slip a framed photo into her bag, and take the keys off her ring like it was any other Tuesday. She said goodbye like she was going to the grocery store. It wasn't the absence that hurt at first. It was the echo. How quiet the apartment became without her humming, her heels clacking against the tiles, the way she used to burn sage and talk to plants like they were roommates. For the first week, I didn't sleep. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, eyes open, heart flatlining against the sheets. The silence pressed against my ears like static. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined her in Liam's arms, laughing at something stupid and romantic. I'd wonder, did she ever laugh like that with me? Or was I always the commercial break between two seasons of her real life? I stopped answering calls. My assistant said clients were getting anxious. I told her to stall, to make something up. I couldn't draw, couldn't think, couldn't even look at the blueprints on my desk without seeing them blur into the image of Emily in that damned red scarf she wore the night she met him again. What stung the most wasn't the betrayal. It was how civil I'd been about it. How dignified. Like I'd been cast in a role and forgot I had the right to scream. Some nights, I came this close to calling her, just to hear her voice, to ask if she missed me even a little. But I couldn't bring myself to be that man. Not after I'd already let her go with grace. Instead, I began writing. Journaling, really. My therapist said it would help, so I tried. I wrote letters to no one. Scribbled anger into margins. Cursed Liam. Cursed myself. I wrote things like, she traded gold for glitter, then immediately crossed it out because it sounded petty, and I wasn't petty. Or maybe I was. Who knows anymore? It was 3 months in when I saw her name again, casually dropped in a gallery review. Emily Green, co-curating a private show with Liam Andrews. They called it, Restless Art from Reunited Souls. I stared at the headline for 10 full minutes. My fingers trembled over the trackpad. And then I laughed. Not out of humor, more like something breaking loose inside my chest. I saw photos. Liam with his guitar slung over his back, Emily in a flowing dress looking like she'd found her sunrise. But beneath the curated shots, I saw cracks. She smiled, yes, but the light behind her eyes was borrowed. I knew her well enough to tell. She wasn't glowing. She was clinging. That was the moment something shifted. Not vengeance. Not yet. But I felt myself waking up. I stopped pretending this was just a sad chapter. It wasn't a chapter. It was an origin story, one where I would no longer be the man who stood still while life rearranged him. I started going to the gym again. Cleaned out the closet. Got a haircut that didn't make me look like a widower. People started noticing. Clients returned. I met with a journalist from Architect Weekly who wanted to feature my upcoming museum redesign. But beneath the professional momentum, something darker pulsed quietly. She left me for a man who only ever loved the idea of her. And soon, she'd realize that. She'd look back and see what she lost, not just stability, but someone who saw her completely, who gave her everything without keeping score. And when that regret hit, I'd be too far ahead for her to catch up. When Emily walked out of my life, I didn't beg her to stay. I didn't scream or curse or tell her she'd regret it. I simply let the silence close the door behind her. But in the months that followed, silence became my companion, and my battlefield. There was no grand outburst, no broken furniture or drunken nights. Just long hours with my thoughts, and the slow burn of humiliation cooling into something sharper. Not rage. Something quieter. Sharper. Revenge, yes, but not the kind she'd see coming. I never intended to get even. That's too simplistic. I didn't want her to hurt the way I had. I wanted her to understand. To finally see what she threw away. And more than that, I wanted to reclaim myself, not as her leftover, but as a man no longer orbiting her gravitational pull. The first thing I did was change my environment. I relocated to a clean-lined apartment in a newer district, high up and bright, all white stone and sunlight. It was colder than our old home. That was intentional. I wanted no warmth that wasn't earned. I buried myself in my work. Designed a public library with a rooftop garden that ended up making the cover of Modern Architect. My inbox overflowed. Invitations. Interviews. Teaching offers. For once, I said yes. Then came the gallery opening. Her name wasn't even on the walls, just whispered in the corners. Apparently, the art world was tired of Emily's abstract melancholy. They wanted new blood. That's when I remembered Clara. Clara was Emily's assistant. Quiet. Observant. Often overlooked. But I'd seen her work once, late at night, tucked behind canvases in the studio. It was raw. Brave. I sent her an anonymous message through a foundation I now advised: submit your portfolio. No names. Just trust. Clara got the grant. And the spotlight. Within weeks, her pieces were everywhere. Magazines, galleries, interviews, fresh and bold. The same critics who once praised Emily's soulful nostalgia were now calling her style stagnant and emotionally parasitic. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. The industry had a new darling, and Emily was watching her grow from the same soil she once owned. Still, it wasn't enough. Not yet. I reached out to an art columnist, through a proxy, of course. Suggested a piece on the rise of derivative art in post-divorce expressionism. I knew exactly which gallery Emily had booked for her comeback. And I knew the critic would be there. The review was surgical. Cold. It dissected her work without ever naming her directly, but she would know. I saw her once after that, at a mutual friend's exhibit. She didn't recognize me at first. I'd shaved, gained muscle, grown into a version of myself she'd never met. When our eyes finally locked, she froze. There was a flicker, regret, confusion, maybe even fear. I nodded politely and walked on. It was a rehearsal for the real finale. Still, there were moments when I doubted myself. At night I stared at the ceiling and asked, "Who are you becoming?" But I never lost sight of the goal. This wasn't about punishing her. It was about breaking the illusion that she had traded stability for passion, when in truth, she had traded gold for glitter. She had to feel that. Not through confrontation. Through comparison. So I built, elevated, and refined. Every article, every feature, every award, I didn't send them to her. I let them find her. I knew they would. The world is small when you regret the one who let you go. Some say revenge is best served cold. I disagree. It's best served indirectly. Let them serve themselves. And Emily? She's still eating. I never wanted to destroy her. That's the part people won't understand. They'll call it calculated, cold even. But they didn't see the way she looked at him, Liam, like he held all the colors she'd been missing. They didn't feel what I did, lying beside her at night while her mind wandered 10 years into the past. So no. I didn't want to ruin her. I just wanted her to see. See what she gave up. See what love looks like when it's real, enduring. See the shape of regret. After she left, I disappeared. New city, new job, new silence. I didn't post anything. No cryptic quotes, no photos with pretty faces. I didn't give her the satisfaction of thinking she'd wounded me into bitterness. I vanished from her radar like a name forgotten in a dream. But I was watching. It started with a whisper, an intern from her old gallery who followed me on LinkedIn. She mentioned Emily's exhibit had been pulled. Something about creative plagiarism, Liam's influence turning her once vibrant work into self-indulgent messes. I nodded politely. I filed the information away like blueprints for a slow-burning fire. I didn't need to light the match. She and Liam were already fumbling with the gasoline. Instead, I started building. I funded a young artist, Nora, one of Emily's assistants from years back. I remembered her because she once nervously asked Emily if she could take Friday afternoons off for a painting class. Emily had laughed, told her she didn't have the guts to make it. Turns out, she did. Under my patronage, Nora flourished. Her work, textured, haunting, undeniably original, found its way into a new gallery space I co-designed. I made sure her name topped the list of invitees for the same exhibit Emily used to headline. Poetic symmetry. Still, I didn't reach out. Not when I saw photos of Liam arguing with gallery owners. Not when I heard through mutual acquaintances that Emily was couch hopping after Liam drained her savings and vanished to Portugal with a 24-year-old sculptor. I waited. Then came the gala. The architecture firm I'd partnered with was celebrating a new cultural center we built downtown, a minimalist masterpiece, if I say so myself. Clean angles, transparent glass walls, a metaphor made of steel, nothing hidden, nothing to lie behind. I was there, naturally. Not to flaunt, but because I'd earned it. I'd survived the fire and rebuilt from ash. My name was on the project. My fingerprints in every beam. And Emily came. I saw her across the room, hesitating at the edge of the crowd, wine glass trembling slightly in her hand. Her once effortless beauty was still there, but dimmed. There was wear in her eyes, the kind no concealer could cover. Our eyes met. She froze. I offered a polite smile, the kind you give a stranger who looks vaguely familiar. She crossed the floor slowly, like she was walking across ice. "Hi," she said, voice soft. "I wasn't sure if you'd talk to me." "Of course," I said. "Why wouldn't I?" Her eyes darted, searching for warmth. "I've seen your work lately. You've done well." "I've been lucky," I said. "And focused." There was a pause, charged, heavy. She fiddled with the rim of her glass. "I've made mistakes," she said finally. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch just long enough. "I suppose we both did," I said. "But the thing about mistakes, Emily, is that they teach you what you're willing to lose." Her mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. There was a flicker of the old defiance, quickly buried by something more painful, recognition. "You were always the better man," she whispered. "No," I said, gently. "Just the man who stayed." Another beat of silence. She was trembling. Not visibly, maybe not even physically. But I saw it, the kind of tremble that starts deep in the soul. "I didn't come to beg," she said quickly. "I just needed to say it. That I was wrong." I gave her a nod. Not cruel, not distant. Just final. "Thank you for saying it," I said. "I hope you find peace." Her face broke, just slightly. The corners of her mouth twitched like she wanted to cry but wouldn't allow it in this crowd. She nodded, turned, and walked away. Back through the sea of polished people, looking small. That was it. No dramatic scenes. No screaming. No revenge sex with her best friend or ruined career. Just the quiet knowledge that she stood before the man she once underestimated, and found he no longer needed her. That was the victory. It wasn't just about her. It was about me, who I became when I stopped chasing closure and started building my own definition of it. I didn't burn her world down. I simply built one so bright, it made her realize she was standing in the dark. I used to think closure would come with a dramatic scene, shouting, slamming doors, some teary confrontation where one of us would beg and the other would walk away stronger. But it didn't come like that. It came quietly, like morning light creeping into a room you've long abandoned. After I left that gala, after I saw Emily standing there in a pale blue dress that once would have undone me, I realized something. I didn't feel hatred anymore. I didn't feel much of anything. Whatever part of me had once burned for her had already turned to ash. She tried to reach out a few times after that night. A couple of emails. One long letter. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because there was nothing left to say that wouldn't unravel the dignity I'd finally built for myself. She needed answers, maybe even forgiveness. I had already given both, by letting her go. Liam disappeared from her life soon after. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he ran off with another woman and left Emily with debt, lawsuits, and a fractured reputation in the art world. A sad cliché. I didn't smile when I heard it. I just understood. She chose the past. I had chosen peace. In time, my days were filled with new routines, lectures, designs, long walks that didn't feel haunted anymore. I started seeing someone. Her name is Mara. She doesn't ask me to prove myself, doesn't make me compete with ghosts. She meets me where I am. In the present. The funny thing is, revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It was measured, intentional. I didn't destroy Emily. I just stepped out of her orbit and let gravity do the rest. Turns out, when someone builds their world on borrowed dreams, it eventually collapses under its own weight. I walk by my latest project often, a cultural center with clean lines, tall windows, and a quiet garden in the back. My name is etched in silver by the entrance, but I never point it out. I just sit on the bench, sip my coffee, and breathe. Some people pass by without noticing me. Others recognize me and nod. But no one sees the man I used to be, the one who begged for crumbs of love from someone who had already left him in her heart. And that's okay. Because now, I know something I didn't before. Sometimes, love isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to open your hands, even if they come away empty. I freed her once because I thought it was the right thing to do. And in the end, it was. Just not for the reasons I expected.